what happened was my first husband, he raised his eyebrow. And when he did that, it threw me back into that time when my brother used to abuse me. And whenever he did abuse me, that's what he did, same move, right?
Hmm.
So because I didn't know that it was unconscious, I ended up ruining the day. Now that I made it conscious, if it happens again, I can do something about it.
Welcome to episode number 195 of the Couples Therapist Couch.
Welcome to the Couples Therapist Couch, the podcast for couples therapists, marriage counselors, and relationship coaches to explore the practice of couples therapy. And now, your host, Shane Birkel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Couples Therapist Couch. This is your host, Shane Birkel, and this is the podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the episode and you want to be part of a community, then definitely join the Couples Therapist Couch Facebook group. That's completely free. Obviously, you can always join the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, which is the paid basically an amazing supervision group where we talk about couples therapy. Therapists ask questions. There's a ton of course material on working with affairs, working with emotionally focused therapy, doing relational life therapy, all kinds of different course material that you can get access to. And I'm really excited. I'm sort of revamping the whole inner circle, and there's a new business option which is about building your couples therapy practice, which it could be an add-on to the clinical side of things if that's something that's a good fit for you. So go over to the website and check it out. You can get a lot more details and information. I don't want to take too much time talking about it here on the podcast, but it's something you should definitely take a look at if it feels like that could be a good fit for you. In the episode that I'm sharing with you today, I was able to catch up with Heawon Hake, who's a social worker, psychotherapist, and author of the book, Daughter of Korean Freud. She talks a lot about collective consciousness, PTSD, spirituality, and how many of the things that we do are unconscious, and the ways in which we grow up in our families sort of create the things that we do unconsciously, or the way that we behave in the world unconsciously. So it was an amazing conversation. I'm excited for you to check it out. And without further introduction, here is Heawon Hake. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Couples Therapist Couch. This is Shane Birkel, and today I'm speaking with Heawon Hake, social worker, psychotherapist, and author of the new book, Daughter of Korean Freud. Hi Heawon, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sir Shane. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know much of your book and as well as your work as a therapist is about healing from trauma. So I'm looking forward to getting into that and talking about that today. And I just heard that you got great reviews by Publisher Weekly. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm over the moon actually. I got A in all four categories
Oh
for
my
indie
gosh.
authors. Yeah, so I'm really psyched.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I can't wait to talk about the book, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself to start off?
Okay, hi everyone. I am Hewan. I am here to talk with Shane about PTSD, spirituality, and unconsciousness. I am from South Korea. I came here when I was 22 years old. I decided to leave South Korea actually to escape the abuse at home. And when I came here as an immigrant without speaking the language and without knowing anybody, I went through some more traumatic situations.
Mm.
And after I got master's, my work was at psychotherapy center, and we served about 300 mentally ill residents at group home.
Mhm.
And I worked there for 6 years, and we had multiple murders, suicide, and robbery with guns.
Oh wow.
So, to show you, I have a lot of traumatic experiences, PTSDs, and the book I wrote is really about how I was able to heal
Mhm.
using different therapeutic techniques and spirituality.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about your experience in South Korea. How old were you when you left and came to the United States?
So I was 22 years old.
Mhm.
My abuse started when I was 7 years old by
Mhm.
my brother, who is
Mhm.
older. And the book titled The Korean Freud is that my father was the first generation of social workers in South Korea.
Mhm.
And he became very prominent. He wrote more than 10 books. He worked with Congress to develop national health. And so he got so prominent that he was called as Korean Freud in
Mhm.
1980s. And yet he, ignored what was going on at home, the abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't want to go into that too much because we have the topic to cover.
Yeah. But that was really, do you think that was part of the reason why you decided to become a psychotherapist yourself?
Actually, my father had a lot of books, and one of the book that I took out from his library and read was this guidance counselor who was working with troubled kids and how he was able to touch the kids. And that really touched me so hard, so
Mhm.
deeply. So I was in my third or fourth grade, and I decided that I was going to become that therapist
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. And I do want to talk about the top. I know you have a lot to say about the topic, but I'm curious what you mean when you say PTSD and unconsciousness. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I think that in our work, we obviously deal with materials that are available in our consciousness or become available in consciousness. So, for example, if I use my example, I was having a date with my first husband, and things were going great. But all of a sudden, something happened that my mood changed. And I tried to get along, and I just couldn't get out of the mood and ended up ruining the day for both of us. The life went on, and about 10 years later, I'm reading this book on trauma. And that's when it dawned on me about what happened that day. So, what happened was my first husband, he raised his eyebrow. And when he did that, it threw me back into that time when my brother used to abuse me. And whenever he did abuse me, that's what he did, same move, right?
Hmm.
So because I didn't know that it was unconscious, I ended up ruining the day. Now that I made it conscious, if it happens again, I can do something about it,
Hmm.
right? So I think that's what we do a lot, right? We work with the clients to help them to make connections,
Yeah,
right?
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The thing is, though, what happens when we cannot do that?
Hmm.
When PTSD stays in unconsciousness, what do we do?
Hmm.
And also, depth psychology. I don't think you actually, your episodes talked a lot about that.
Hmm.
Depth psychology studies and analyzes unconsciousness. And they say that it's not possible for us to accurately interpret our unconsciousness. So I'm going to use another example.
Hmm.
I have a couple who comes in after the wife was found having an affair. So the couple is committed to make their marriage work. And the husband is desperate to get reassurance from his wife. Um, and he wants her to tell him that I love you. And the wife says that she does feel the love for him. She does want to say that, and yet she cannot say. So why do you think that is? Is that because she has PTSD? She was abused by her father, And so if she says that vulnerable words, she will feel like she's too like it's too risky for her to get that vulnerable. Or is that from her culture, where in her culture, people do not express their affection like that. So we don't know, right? We don't know if that's PTSD or a cultural thing. So that's what I mean by PTSD and unconsciousness. That how do we deal with that?
Yeah. And it's interesting in that, to take that example, the person themselves often doesn't even know why they're struggling to say I love you or whatever the situation is, because they haven't brought it to the level of their consciousness. I mean, I can, relate. I've gone, I feel this at moments, I start getting really upset or angry about something. And sometimes I'm not even sure why, or like, I think that I'm upset at my wife or something, but it feels much more complicated than that because I think there's so much going on.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, neuroscientists, they tell us that we have about 5 to 7% consciousness, and then 95% to 93% unconsciousness of
Oh,
our
wow.
brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I educate my clients. So because we cannot be sure the interpretation, I psychoeducate them about that. I think it's important for clients to realize that, a lot of times they think that they know their partner so well,
Mm-hmm.
especially like if they personalize why their partner does or say things that they know. I know why he does this, or I know she's doing this to bug me.
Yeah.
um, I have a client who is 50 years old wife. She volunteers to help her neighbor who is 80 years old man, and spending time that her husband doesn't feel comfortable. He feels like she's spending too much time, and he's sure that she's doing this to aggravate him,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I, again, as I said, I educate them, both of them, and then bring out the fact that she lost her both parents in fire. She was at home with them at the time, and she was not able to help, and she had to watch them perish in fire, in horror. So to me, my interpretation about this is that she is grieving and helping her grieve by helping her neighbor. Am I sure? No, I'm not. I am suggesting that as a possibility
Mm-hmm.
or a probability,
Right.
which then expands her husband's consciousness that can help him become more humble and more curious,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. Well, and the interesting thing with couples too is that both people's unconsciousness are coming into it. So you're talking about her reality, but there's also the meaning that we could make about his reality, which is why do you think that your wife doing something nice for another person means that she's trying to, do something mean to you?
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, we can go into so many different ways, right?
Right. Right.
And I think that's a nice thing about including that 95% unconsciousness in our work.
Mm-hmm.
So to help clients get a better feel for 95%, I ask them to think about, like, I ask them questions like, stop beating your heart right now. Can they do
Stop.
that?
Oh, stop your
Stop.
heart from beating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
or
Right.
stop your blood from circulating.
Right.
Like they cannot do that either, right? So several questions like this, they begin to think, what does that mean? It's not like God or your partner or your parents are running your body. Who is running it? It's you. You are running it, right? Until now, I think people are so separated from their body. It's something is happening to them, right? They don't own that it's them doing it. So talking about this, I include even PTSD symptoms. They say, oh, this nightmare is happening. I'm going crazy. It's terrible. It's like a nightmare is happening to them, or is it that they are making their 95% is creating this nightmare for a reason?
Right.
Okay. So I will use another example. So I was having this repetitive nightmares. I'm in this big, large, dark, deep pool, and my brother is pulling my legs down to drown me. And I'm fighting with my all might to get away from him. And so when I learned about this, that I create this nightmare, I was thinking like, why would I create this nightmare? And then it dawned on me that, I need to master that situation. So at 50 years old, I went out and I learned how to swim, because until then I avoided anything to do with the swimming, because that really happened in my life.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Some of the trauma was about being in a situation where you were swimming.
Yeah. And my brother
Yeah.
was really pulling me down.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So realizing that and going out to learn how to swim. And then guess what happened? Nightmare stopped.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a different perspective on looking at PTSD symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about because I think there's a fine line between blaming the victim versus feeling a sense of empowerment about our own life, because I totally agree with what you're saying, right? I know people in my personal life who who might have there are situations where it's almost like they're bringing more stress into the situation. They're creating, I think, unconsciously creating more stressful situations for themselves. But there are also times where people are victimized, and it's not because it's their fault or something like that. And so I think it's important to be able to sort of talk about this in order to help people feel empowered, like your example for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. What you're talking about is true. And that's going to come up a little bit again with my twist, because I am a Korean American psychotherapist. Actually, the part that I didn't talk about before is that I, when I left Korea, I denounced anything to do with the Korean or Asian culture because of the abuse. And then when I came here after my master's, I went to Gestalt Center of Long Island. And Gestalt theory incorporates so much of Eastern philosophy, which led me to look at my culture with fresh eyes, and then ended up integrating both Western and Eastern teachings. So I think I bring that a little bit of twist maybe. So
Yeah.
I embraced all the things that I learned in America, the Western psychotherapeutic models, and then add that Eastern mysticism and teachings into what I do.
Yeah.
So so that will come up about, yes, trauma happens and people get victimized and there are things that happen. And I'm always conscious of ways to bring empowerment for our clients.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so when I point out the impact of the trauma, they are in pain. And then I also point out the power that they have in their 95%. Like, when we get a like little cut in our finger. The 95% goes to work immediately to start healing that wound.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true for our emotional and mental cuts.
And would you say that the 95% only knows how to do it in the way that it's learned before? In other words, if we're emotionally hurt,
Mm-hmm.
then we seek to heal in ways that may or may not be helpful for us based on what we've been through before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so it's gonna come up later on, or if you want to do it now, we can do it. It's we have the 95% conscious unconsciousness, but then we also have collective consciousness
Mm-hmm.
that is over the billions of years that
Right.
that we got. And then we also have not only intergenerational trauma, but also intergenerational wisdom.
Yes.
So all three of those unconsciousness that are at work, I think, helped us to be here today
Mm-hmm.
and continue to learn and thrive.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah. So as you said, like I am really about empowering the couple and using the positive reinforcement rather than negative reinforcement. And I am like I would like to see myself as and therapist, A&D therapist, not but therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So before, when I came here, I was a but therapist, like no Eastern but Western therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am Western and Eastern, 5% consciousness and 95% unconsciousness, and collective consciousness, and intergenerational wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Shifting a little bit, can I talk about suicidal ideation? And because obviously with PTSD clients, we have a lot of that
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I look at a little bit differently again here. I look at suicidal ideation as not escapism or coward way of dealing with the difficult situation. Rather, I look at that as a strength and agency. I mentioned before depth psychology, and according to them, how PTSD happens is because our inability to do anything during traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes, that contributes to the birth of PTSD symptoms. And one way of dealing with our unconscious drive to feel powerful during or after traumatic event is to have suicidal ideation. So let me give you an example. I talk about this actually in my memoir, saying practicing dying every day.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was being abused by my brother physically and sexually every day, and my parents refusing to protect me, I felt trapped. Of course, I thought about running away thousands of times, but running away to streets meant that I would be in similar situation or worse. So as a way to get some sense of power and control was for me to have suicidal ideation, many different kinds. It was I thought that it would be up to me when to die and how to die, not up to my brother.
Right.
That really kept me alive, I believe. So when we reframe suicidal ideation this way, we are able to tap into our client's need for the ability to do something. Like I had this client came to me and she was like, she didn't want to say it but she ended up saying like, I am afraid to share this with you about suicidal ideation that you're gonna just call the police and lock me up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I shared my idea about suicidal ideation, and which actually opened her up to explore how she can have what are the options that she has to feel that power and control.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm not saying that I'm not against the current models that we use to work with clients with suicidal ideation. I would like to add this as a perspective.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's very valuing of a person to say something like, there's some reason, right, in this 95% unconscious, there's some reason why it makes sense that you would be having these thoughts and you would be wanting to do these things. And it gives them a sense of reassurance or normalizing that it's not because you're crazy. It's not because, there's something wrong with you. It's because this is part of you that's seeking maybe some control or something that you need.
Empowered in the
Yeah.
situation, because when like if you are kidnapped and you are locked up in a place and there is nothing that you can do, like having that ideation can give you that, that feel, the sense of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Okay. Moving on to another difficult topic of death.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Working with clients with PTSD, obviously, bring up a lot of, the topic about death, because they either experienced death or near death of themselves or their loved ones, right? So, so when I try to approach this subject, I see that so many people really don't want to go there, as if they just can avoid thinking about it or talking about it, that they don't have to deal with it, which is not true. The more they repress it, the more powerful their fear becomes. And I think that, so let's say I experienced near death many times, and as long as I stay in this belief that death is a terrible thing, I think that kind of like really keep me as that fearful victim. And so dealing with or facing with the death in a conscious way, I think help us a great deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard of or know of this a Zen Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. Have you
Yes,
ever?
definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have some of his books. Yeah.
Okay. So, are you familiar about the example that he used, the wave?
I'm not sure. I can't remember
Okay.
the wave. Yeah.
So he tells us the wave that when it goes back into the body of ocean, did it die? Or the flower blooms and withers and disappears, did it die? When the spring comes, the flower is back. And the wave comes back from the body of ocean. So the Thich Nhat Hanh, he shows how the life cycles and it comes back, right? And our body is like that wave or the flower. Yeah. So I use those examples with the clients who have more creative side, and they can take that example and do very well. If the clients are more logical side and they just can't get that, use that to imagine their bodies like that. Then I use the science to explain that when the scientists dissect our body to the smallest particle and look with magnifiers what do they see? Nothing but energy.
Mm-hmm.
So we are made out of this energy, and energy is not destructible. So when our body dies, the energy that makes up our body goes back into the where it came from to come back into the next manifestation, next form, right? So I use examples like that. And also, I try to gently bring up the fact that our body goes through birthing and death, dying every moment of the day. So, did you know that 3 million cells in our body explode into death every day?
No, wow. 3
Yeah,
million?
3 million cells.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually, because of that, that make room for new cells to be born.
Mm-hmm.
It regenerates every single day. And that's how we actually keep our body healthy. So, can you imagine if we hold on to the dead cells and do not eliminate them?
Mm-hmm.
Our body will go through great crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I try to come up with different soft examples to help them to make peace with the idea of dying.
Yeah.
And when they're able to do that, they gain much more freedom from their pain.
Mm-hmm. So instead of avoiding thinking about death and suppressing those emotions and thoughts, the way to bring it to consciousness and to face it is to move into acceptance, I guess, about the fact that we are going to die, and to have some of these, I guess what you're talking about gives people hope, um or acceptance maybe is the word, about the fact that this is just part of the, part of life is death.
Yeah. And also, you used the word normalizing before.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, when I was going through that trauma of facing death, like, so that fear was frozen in my being. And so when I was able to work through the idea of dying, and that's okay, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that I am obliterated completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the fear was a lesson that me
Yeah.
dying is not the ultimate evil thing.
Yeah.
It's the cycle of the nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, what can people do with that on a day-to-day basis if, those thoughts of the fear of dying pops into our head, you know I mean, do you see it as sort of a mindfulness practice, almost, of trying to move into acceptance of the reality that that's okay?
Mindfulness, that's used a lot. To me, mindfulness is the meditation to learn to be here and now. And that's definitely helpful. To me, the death, um, the topic of death helps a lot with the spirituality. When I look around that and know that everything that is in this world is energy, the same thing that made me made everything around me. And so when my body disappears, I may be back as the wind or the cloud or as the ocean or the stone, whatever. That is all like interconnectedness.
Yeah.
We are
Well,
intervene.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I
go ahead.
think that's nice, and I hope that's true. But I mean, is there something valuable about grieving our life, to say maybe I will be obliterated and I won't have any memories of anything ever again? and that's okay too,
Well,
right?
right.
Like
So,
it's okay to
yes,
feel the sadness of the loss of my life at some point.
absolutely. That's where also the collective consciousness comes from. So,
Mm-hmm.
although me as Heawon may lose that memory, when
Mm-hmm.
I go back, the collective consciousness continues on,
Yeah,
intergenerational, right?
sure,
The
sure.
trauma or wisdom that continues on, you
Yeah.
know. And yet, as absolutely. So what I do with my clients is that we have four dimensions. I have physical, emotional, mental, and physical, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
So the lower three are human level. As a human, yes, we grieve. As a spirit, there is no grieving,
Mm-hmm.
because spirit is interconnected to everything. And yet, because we are having the human experience, we do go through that grief.
Yeah,
And that's absolutely valid.
right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because I think that we do the same thing in our relationships. Like there are a lot of things that I wish I had in my relationship that I probably never will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's okay to feel sad about that, but it doesn't mean I want to change my partner. It doesn't mean something like that. It just means that I think there's a healthy sort of grief. Same with facing death. There's a
Mm-hmm.
healthy sort of grieving that needs to happen, because once you do that, you're no longer suppressing those emotions, and you can live more freely and live with more joy and passion for your life, because you're not sort of being stuck or held back by the unconscious fear of death.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all four dimensions, when all four dimensions work well, in tune with each other, I think we can achieve optimal health,
Mm-hmm.
right? Any dimensions that we ignore or repress or don't deal with will cause problem in our being.
I know we're getting close to the end of the time here, and I'm really fascinated with this idea of the 95% being unconscious. And I think, part of when I think about this for couples and their relationships is like, oftentimes we take that unconsciousness and we believe that we are experiencing something with our partner, but it's really coming from that 95% of unconsciousness. And I think when we move it into the consciousness, it helps people move into compassion for themselves and for each other,
Mm,
to understand that there's a reason why these things are. It's not because we're mean people who are trying to be hurtful to each other. There's really a lot more to understand about that. Like you said earlier, like the idea of moving into curiosity
mhm.
with each other, I think is so important.
So we mentioned a couple of times about collective consciousness. Carl Jung talked about this when he had repetitive dreams of his streets being filled with dead people and full of blood. And he thought that at the time he didn't know what this dream meant, and he thought he was losing his mind. And then World War II came. So he coined the term collective consciousness. It's almost kind of like having superpower that you have the ability to foretell what's to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have that kind of personal experience as well, and we all have that in our 95% unconsciousness. So when I talk with client and that they are aware of their own PTSD, their own traumatic experience, and intergenerational traumatic experience, I also point out their collective consciousness that they got from their ancestors, that they may not, like that 5% brain doesn't know that they have this, and yet they
Mm-hmm.
do. And the more they learn to tap into that part, they will have so much more superpower for, like, for example. And then also the intergenerational strength and wisdom that they have. So I really talk about a lot about, the empowering them to tap into those things. And I use different examples for them to learn, and then actually like have them close their eyes and imagine to connect their own this 95% unconsciousness. And the things that they come up with are pretty amazing stuff. Like with the talk therapy, it may take a year to get to somewhere. But using this kind of model, with several sessions, they actually change. Like the definition of their face actually changes dramatically. And you can see something amazing. So I would like to invite the listeners to look into the spiritual journey and Eastern mysticism that they can utilize maybe. So I compiled a reading list that the books that I read along my spiritual journey. If some of you are interested in looking at that, I will share that with you, the link, so they can go to that link and see the book titles.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So that would be my little gift for the
Yeah, thank you
listeners.
so much. Yeah, so if they want to learn more about all of that, then they can take a look at the link that you're going to share to
Yeah.
learn a lot more. Great.
Yeah. And if they want to
Yeah,
communicate, I have, my website is KoreanAmericanPsychotherapist.com. It's easy to remember.
great. Yeah, and if any buddy wants to learn more, they can take a look at those links. They can take a look at your website and the book list that you have put together. Thank you so much. And your book, obviously, they can buy your
Yes.
book. And
Yes.
yeah, which would be a great way to learn more about all these things that you're talking about. But
Okay.
I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about these things. Any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate you having me here, and I appreciate the fact that I was able to come to this country, and able to make my own life and have a successful private practice. So I
Yeah.
appreciate all along.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Heawon. I'm really grateful for you coming on, and hopefully we can catch up again at some point.
That would be great, Shane. You take care.
All right. Thank you so much, Heawon Hake, author of the book Daughter of Korean Freud. So grateful to have you come on the show. And thank you to all you listeners out there. So grateful for all of you. Definitely go get a copy of the book. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as Heawon's website. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you to those of you who have left ratings and reviews. If you haven't done that, wherever you listen to the podcast, I'd really appreciate that. Also, I'm finally starting to get all of these episodes up onto YouTube. So go over to YouTube, find me there, Shane Birkel, and you can start to watch the videos from these interviews. Really excited about that. This episode is sponsored by the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, which is the membership site that I created about working with couples. And, at this point, there's hundreds of hours of content to help you become a better couples therapist. If you're just starting out, it's a really great way to get going. If you are a very experienced therapist, it's a great way to get education on working with affairs, working with high conflict couples, working with emotionally focused therapy, relational life therapy, all kinds of different things. And there's a really cool new way that I'm setting it up, which is that you can do an add-on bonus to your inner circle, which is about the business of couples therapy. And it's all about building a profitable couples therapy practice. And I'm really excited. I've been working with a bunch of people on building their practice, starting a podcast, being on social media more, all kinds of different goals that people have for themselves, how to use marketing. So I'm excited about that. If that's something that appeals to you, definitely click on it in the show notes. And if you're just interested in the clinical side, then you can get that option. If you want to get the business side, then you can get the clinical plus the business. So There's something for everyone there. And also, there, please join the free Couples Therapist Couch Facebook group if that's where you're at in your career. You just want to join the free group. That's another great resource to take advantage of. And I'm always grateful for ratings and reviews on wherever you listen to podcasts. I'd really appreciate that. This is Shane Birkel, and this is the Couples Therapist Couch, the podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody.